Initiating central pawn pressure immediately opens lines for piece development and challenges opponent's space. Establishing central pawn presence mirrors white's intent, setting the stage for a classic queen's pawn game. Developing the knight frees up the queen and prepares to castle, setting up a flexible central game. Developing the knight to its most natural square, nf6, black aims to contest central control and prepare for castling. Aggressively contesting the center's airspace, white immediately creates a dynamic pawn structure ripe for sharp exchanges. Solidifying the central pawn and preparing for queen's gambit decline structures, black prioritizes structural integrity. Opening the center, white seeks to disrupt black's pawn structure and potentially activate pieces for an early initiative. Reclaiming the center with the pawn solidifies black's central presence and prepares for piece development. Securing the center and preparing for knight development to a more active square adds pressure. Developing the knight to c6 solidifies the pawn center and prepares for castling, a fundamental developing principle. Developing the bishop to f4 adds pressure along the a7-g1 diagonal, eyeing potential weaknesses. Reinforcing the central pawn structure, this move prepares to develop the kingside bishop and create a solid pawn chain. Solidifying the central pawn structure, white prepares for gradual development and restricts black's immediate queenside possibilities. Developing the bishop to its most active square, preparing to castle and fortify the king. Developing the bishop to this square strengthens the kingside and prepares for kingside castling, aiming for a solid central presence. Securing the monarch is paramount here, freeing up the rook for potential action and solidifying the defensive structure against white's ever-present queenside pressure. Securing king's safety now prevents any nasty knight forks. Securing the bishop and preparing for queenside expansion, this establishes a solid defensive structure while anticipating future pawn thrusts. Securing the king's safety allows focus on developing the queenside. Preparing to expand on the queenside and potentially support a b5 pawn push for queenside space. Asserting dominion over the c-file solidifies white's pressure and prepares for potential pawn advances, aiming to squeeze black's position. A tactical retreat, this bishop now prepares to support a queenside pawn advance or reinforce the kingside. Shifting the bishop to b1 prepares a potential queenside expansion or an escape route for the king. The knight embarks on an unusual excursion, aiming to disrupt white's queenside development and potentially exploit the light squares. Preparing to reignite the queenside initiative, white seeks to shift the bishop's influence. Black aggressively challenges the center, preparing to unleash knights and potentially open the kingside. Unleashing knightly pressure on the queenside, aiming to disrupt black's queenside structure and gain initiative. Reclaiming the bishop's diagonal is a patient step, aiming to improve piece coordination and prepare for pawn breaks on the kingside. Targeting black's underdeveloped kingside, this knight eyes crucial outposts and disrupts harmonious piece placement. Sacrificing the bishop opens a diagonal for the queen and disrupts white's kingside development, aiming for active piece play. Initiating a pawn chenectomy opens a clear diagonal for your queen to infiltrate black's weakened kingside. Initiating queen activity toward the queenside, aiming to support the knight's maneuver and potentially exploit the weakened dark squares around white's king. This squares up the queenside, aiming to exploit the pressure on the d5 pawn while preparing a kingside pawn storm. Repositioning the rook behind the pawn chain, this prepares to contest the c-file and offers a potential outpost for the knight. Embracing aggressive pawn thrusts, white seeks to crack open the kingside and exploit black's slightly passive piece placement. Opening the g-file creates immediate tension, but be wary of the exposed king as white's pieces swarm. Opening the h-file creates immediate danger for black's king, demanding vigilant defense. Finally, black redirects the knight from the inactive wing, aiming to regroup and challenge white's advanced pawn structure. Unleashing the king's pawn to carve out central space, daring black to challenge the ensuing pawn storm. a bold pawn sacrifice to rip open the queenside and gain queenside space. Snatching the pawn creates a material advantage, but opens lines for black's queen and bishop to exploit white's now vulnerable king. Exposing the rook to immediate pressure on the open file disrupts black's defensive setup and invites complications. Sacrificing the queen for material gain offers a sharp, double-edged path, immediately intensifying the tactical storm. Unleashing a central pawn, Storm aims to shatter white's structure and open lines for your pieces. Sacrificing central pawn control for initiative, this capture ignites tactical fireworks and opens lines toward the enemy king. Black liberates a knight, immediately challenging the central pawn and aiming to disrupt white's queen position. A daring sacrifice is unleashed, opening lines and challenging the central pawn chain for active piece play. The queen reclaims central influence, preparing to contest the now open central files and challenge white's isolated pawn. Shielding the king with the queen offers vital breathing room, consolidating defenses amidst the storm. Initiating a desperate attack, black throws the kitchen sink at the white king, seeking immediate complications. Securing the monarch's escape route amidst the tactical chaos demonstrates prudence. The rook invades, seeking to exploit the unprotected queenside pawns. Recapturing the pawn immediately stabilizes your position after the chaotic exchange, aiming to activate the rook. The rook, now freed, redeploys to the queenside, eyeing open lines and potential harassment. Unleashing the rook opens a dramatic assault on the king's defenses, forcing a sharp response in this messy position. Sacrificing the queen's attacker opens a perilous diagonal towards your beleaguered king. Unleashing a pawn, Storm aims to pry open the queenside for attack, but it weakens white's own king. Suddenly, the knight abandons its secure outpost to seek active play, hoping to disrupt white's kingside initiative. Unleashing a pawn, Storm here strips away your king's defenses, creating immediate tactical chaos. Unleashing the pawn, Storm creates immediate chaos, potentially exposing your king while opening lines for counterplay. Sacrificing material to expose the black king opens a decisive attack along the g-file.